Hi guys, Samantha from Jessica Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a tiger lily cane. And I'm going to be doing two different versions. I'm going to be doing a much lighter tiger lily, and I also want to do kind of this dark red tiger lily. So I've got two skinner blends in front of me. The one has ecru orange, two allzarin crimson, and then another orange. And that's for our dark one. And then for our light one we want ecru, orange, cadmium yellow, ecru, and then two white. And the reason we're putting two of some, like here, is because I want a bigger block of that colour in the skinner blend. And for each of these parts I used one block out of a 4-block bar of Premo. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll these through my pasta machine until they are properly conditioned, and so that the blend is nice and smooth. Okay, and so I've done the two skinner blends, so let me show you each one. Here's the one for our dark tiger lily, and here's the one for our light tiger lily. So what you want to do is you want to take each one and we want to fold it. You don't want to be folding it like that. You want to be folding it the same way you have been as you've been rolling it through the pasta machine. Now if you haven't done a skinner blend before, I will have a link to a in-depth skinner blend tutorial. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fold the blend like that, and I'm squishing out any air bubbles. Okay, and I'm just busy tucking in these ends because there's a little bit, they can get a little bit ragged. And then you're going to run this through the pasta machine from one short end to the next short end, so you're essentially stretching it out. And you'll do the same with this one. Okay, so I've stretched out our light skinner blend. I will do the dark one in a little while, as soon as we've done this one. So what we want to do is we want to be making a skinner blend plug, and now the white is going to be the tip of our leaf. So I'm going to start by folding it, and then once I've got a little bit of a tip and I start working my way into the ecru, then we will add spots. So I'm going to start working my way into the ecru after this fold. So I'm going to start putting in a few spots. So I'll pop that to the side, and you're going to grab your crimson again and just have a little bit. And you want to roll this into a nice thin log. And we're going to put this in our tiger lily. And we're going to do the exact same for the other one. I'll show you how to do it with the other one, because it will look a little bit different because the crimson's not going to show up as much, but it's basically the exact same process. Now you want this to be pretty thin. You can use an extruder if you have one to get this quite a bit thinner, but if you don't, then you can just roll it like this. Okay, and then just use a blade to just trim it, and then you want to lay that across. And now at this beginning stage you don't want too many of these spots. Just a few, so I'm going to put in 2 to start with. Okay, and just press those down. Then I'm going to fold it again, and I'll put in 1. And you're basically going to do this up the entire length of your skinner blend plug. So as you're folding, you will add your spots. And as you go further into your Skin and Blend plug, you will add more spots. And so I'll just continue adding spots until I'm finished with the plug. And you'll basically do the exact same with the other one, but when you're doing it with the other one, just keep in mind that because you're using the crimson again, and you already have the crimson in here, it's going to actually fade out and then fade back in again. And when you're doing this one, you want to start the spots on this end. You don't ignore this end, because I want this to be the tip of the flower, and you'll start putting the spots in when you start reaching the orange. So round about this part of the Skin and Blend, you'll start putting spots in across, but don't worry about doing it across here. Okay, so here are our two Skin and Blend plugs. And so this one, you can see that I started with the spots and just went all the way down to the ecru. And then this one, I started at the white and went all the way down to just like the very edge of the ecru, and then I tapered it off towards the end. So now what we want to do is we want to reduce this. So the first thing you need to do is just kind of squish it together and get it all stuck together, because you've got some ends that are wider, some ends that are smaller. And what we're going to do is we're going to reduce it, and then we're going to cut it in half, and we're going to put another one next to it, and you'll see what I mean as soon as we get to that step. But the first step is to get it into a nice even shape, and you can use your roller, you can use your hands, completely up to you. But just reduce this so that you can cut it into two pieces. Okay, so here's what they look like now that they are reduced. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to cut it in half. And what we're going to do is we want to put it together like this. But first you need to take each end and gently mold it into almost like half a teardrop, if you were going to cut a teardrop in half. And you'll see what I mean in just a minute. Or not really a semi teardrop, maybe half a football shape. That's a more correct shape. So you'll just pinch the ends and then use your tile to move it around. Okay, so I'm starting to get that shape. And you only want the dome on one end. So that's why I'm busy pressing it against my tile, because I want the one end to be flat and the other end to be domed. Just like that. So it's kind of half a football, so if you put it together it would create a football shape. And you'll do the same with this one. Okay, and here is how they should look. So when you put them together, it's going to create kind of a fat football or leaf shape. So now what we want to do is I'm going to take ecru, and this has been rolled out to about 1 millimeter thick. And I'm going to put this down the inside of our petal. Just trim away that excess. And then just press so that it sits together nicely. And then bring over your other piece, and you want to sit them together like so. And you'll repeat this with the other one, except that the center vein that I'm going to be using will be crimson instead of ecru. And just pinch and pinch that end. And then what you can do is you could probably reduce this as a round, but then it would be quite hard to keep this straight, so I'm going to be reducing it as a petal. And this can be a little bit tedious, but it's fine. So what you'll do to reduce the petal is you'll take each side and pinch it like that, so that you're constantly kind of correcting that shape. And it'll take a little bit of time, but that's how you do it. And you need to do it so that you can cut out 6 petals. And I will go and repeat this with my crimson one. Okay, so I've reduced both of them, and here is how they look. And so I'm going to now trim them into 6 pieces. But before you do that, just trim off the extra end. Like so. And then I'm going to cut it in half. And then into 3. Okay, and then you can decide whether you want it to be the white on the inside or if you would prefer it the ecru. But that is the way that I built it. I built it so the ecru is supposed to go on the inside. Now I might need to pinch these a little bit more to lengthen them out a bit. Let's see. And we still need to put a center in. We must not forget that. But here is what the one is basically gonna look like. So I'll just put that off to the side and I'll cut this one up. Okay, and here is what this one looks like once I've put it together, just about. So now of course we need to do the center. So what we'll need is wasabi green rolled into a log, and some white rolled out on your thickest setting, which is about 2 millimeters thick. Okay, and I'm just trimming away the excess. And then you just roll it up so you have one layer of white. Around your little piece of wasabi. And then you want to reduce this. And that should go pretty quickly. Just pinch these ends. And then reduce, because we want to make essentially a lace cane. And keep in mind we don't need that much for our center. Reduce it, then you'll chop it into equal sections. Like so. Okay. And then just take those sections and pop them next to each other. And on top of each other. and then just squish that together to form your center. And then you'll just reduce that down until it will fit inside your flowers. Okay. So it's just a very small lace cane. So now we're going to take these and we're going to put our ecru pieces together, but just make sure that all of your petals are shaped the right way. So things like this where it's a little bit too fat, I want to just gently pinch around the middle, so just lengthen it out a little bit. Okay, and that's 1/2. Then you'll do the same on the other side. Gently pinch. And press them together. Okay. And now tiger lilies come in many different colors. So I'm just showing you the 2 colors that are my favorite, but I would have loved to do a pink one. There's also some purple ones, there's some more bright yellow ones. There's lots and lots of different colors. So go and have a look, see what you can find, and create the one that you like the best. We didn't use any color recipes today, so you can use Premo colors straight out of the packet. Really easy to do, and create your favorite color. So those fit together quite nicely. So what I want to do quickly is grab a ball tool. I'm just gently gonna, actually I'll use a piercing pin. Just gently press inside here so that we have enough space to fit our middle of our flower. Okay, and as I said, you only need a very small amount. In there. Make sure that you've got it on the other side too. Make sure you've got those pressed together. And the way I press it together is I actually rotate and just gently press on each of the flower heads. And if you see any distortion in the flower heads, fix it now because we're going to be packing it in just a minute. There we are. I'm pretty happy with that. I need to just cut that out of the way because this side's a little bit higher than the other one, so I just want to trim away a little bit of this cane. And then we can get packing. If one side's a little bit larger than the other, I like to just try and quickly shave away some of that to make it a little bit more even. Okay, and then I would press on each of these ends again. Okay, and now I'm going to go grab the translucent so we can pack this. Okay, And what I like to do is I like to take translucent white. You can use just normal Premo translucent, and I roll it into a log, nice thick log, and I pinch the outside. And I've got a little bit of red on this, so I could just trim that away. Now just pinch the outside to form it into a triangle. So I just pinch out 3 points, and then what I want to do is I want to make that triangle fairly shallow, so it's quite a it's not a tall triangle. Because I can guess here at the angle I'm going to need. So I need to make that a little bit larger, so I'll squish that down. And I need to make the top a bit more sharp and pointed. Okay, and I think that's about right. Just go trim this end, and I'm going to trim that end. Okay, I'm just going to make a mark where I need to cut. Just going to pinch this a little bit more, and what I'm actually doing is I'm beveling in these edges so that we almost have like a rounded shape. So you've got a curve there and a curve there, and then we run off into points. So it's not a typical triangle, because we want to keep the roundness of our petals. And then I'll just insert it, and if I have any trouble I will take it out again, fix that issue, like that was not pointed enough for my liking. And I'll insert it again. And I'll do this for the crimson one as well. And your translucent should come just up to your petals, possibly a little bit over. And turn it around and do the same on the other side. Make sure that you're all happy with it. And that is one piece of your cane done. You'll need to fill in each of these sections. Okay, so here are both of our canes now that I have packed them. So now we are going to reduce them. And all you'll do is you'll just squish it together first, just to make sure that all of your pieces are together, and rotate while you're doing this, and swap to the other side too. And then what you do is you're just going to start squeezing and rotating while you do that. And aim for the middle. You don't want to be pressing on the sides, you want to be trying to press in the middle of your cane. And this will help decrease distortion. So you can see that I'm squeezing around the middle and I'm not worrying about the edges just yet. Once I've got it a little bit reduced, then I'll gently press on the edges. And you're going to have a bit of distortion until you get it down. So what you can do is you can gently press on it like that, and that can also help reduce the amount of distortion. But with canes like this, you're always going to have a bit of distortion. So I'm just pressing around the edge here, and I'm going to do the same here. And then I always tend to keep those ends, because once you've got it to, once it's starting to reduce and you're just leaving these ends on, that means that you won't have any more distortion. So just leave those ends on and continue to reduce. And just squeeze around these ends like so every now and then. Now I'm almost down to a size that I like. I don't like to reduce it too far until I actually see what the cane looks like. And then when I see what the cane looks like, then I can decide how far I would actually like to reduce it. Because generally I like to reduce it down into multiple sizes. And these are great after all because they actually help you reduce, because you can roll and then just gently pull on this. Okay, so I'm going to slice this now. And here is our tiger lily. And that side's a little bit distorted, so I'm just going to cut into it a bit. There we go. And there we go, so hopefully you can see that. And I'm making a bracelet, so I've made the tiger lily fairly small. But let's see what it looks like if we cut into it a little larger. You can see how that looks. Pretty nice. So I'll actually keep these, I might use them in my design. So keep this, and what you can do is you can actually just gently squish it a little bit. And you'll probably be able to use it. And so next I'm going to reduce this one. Okay, and so here is how our two canes look. Now a quick tip for those of you that might accidentally reduce it a little bit too much. All you do, and you need to be doing this carefully, is you gently press on the cane on either side. Like so. And then roll it out every now and then press, and then roll again, and press, and continue doing this until you get it back down to the size that you like. And you need to do this carefully because you don't want to be getting ripples in the edge. And that will bring your cane back up to a larger size. So here's what it was originally, and here is what it is now that it's a little bit larger. So that's a neat little trick for those of you that might accidentally do that, because I do that every now and then too. So you won't be able to get back up to a really nice large size, but you will be able to enlarge it quite a bit. And so I did that with this one as well. All you do is you need to roll consistently, press, roll, press, roll, and let's see how large we can get this. And it will reduce back down pretty quickly. There we are, we can get it quite a bit larger. So those are our two tiger lilies. So now we are going to start assembling our project. Okay, so before we assemble our pendants, I would like to create a translucent stropple cane first. So what you're going to need is some scrap black, scrap white, and scrap translucent. And this is a great way to use your off-colour white and possibly crumbly black and things like that. And all you're going to do is you're going to take each of these and just rip it into pieces. Because a stropple cane is usually made with leftover canes, but I don't have any leftover translucent canes that I would like to use. So I'm just going to improvise by using the main components that I want in the stropple cane. So just rip it up. Just tear it. You want those ragged edges. Okay. And so I've got twice as much translucent here as I do to any one of the colours. So I have one sheet of translucent to one white and one sheet of translucent to one black. Because I would like it to mostly be translucent. Okay, and then once you've got them all ripped up, you want to start stacking together at random your cane. And let me just move this out of the way. And just kind of stick pieces on top of each other. It doesn't matter too much what you do. And rip the pieces up smaller if you need to. And just continue doing this until you build up your cane. And try to keep it even on either side. So the middle here is growing quite large, so I'm busy focusing on this one side, and I'm going to do the same here. There we are, and that's what it should look like once you're done. Now what you want to do is you just want to take this and squish it up into a rectangle shape. Like so. And I'm just using my hands first, but I'm going to use my roller in a minute to help me reduce this. And you're just going to choose one section, and you're just going to start reducing it so that you can cut this in half and stack it again. So just start flattening it out and rolling it out. And this I think will go quite nicely because it will look kind of like branches. And if you have some old translucent canes that you don't really want to use, you can make this cane using those. Okay. So I'm just going to continue reducing it down. And then another thing that I want to do is I actually want to take a piercing pin. You can use a bamboo skewer as well. And I'm just going to punch holes into this. So this is not a traditional stroppel cane. I'm just kind of taking that idea and improvising. So this isn't really a stroppel cane, but I'm going for kind of the same idea. What this is going to do is it's just going to push those layers around and make it a little bit more interesting once you cut into it. Then I'll gently squish the sides, and I will continue reducing. Okay, and then once you've got it reduced down, cut it in half. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take of this, and I'm going to cut it into chunks. This one I'm going to cut in half. This one I'm going to kind of just lay out like so. Here we are, and I'm going to reduce this again. Okay, and then once you've reduced it, you'll cut it in half again and stack it. And this will be our cane. And now it's going to look different each time, and it's also going to look different depending on the canes that you used, if you did want to use canes. So what I might actually do, just to give it a little bit more personality, is grab a piercing pin and just roll some divots into it. And I'll do that on this end too. and that can give it a little bit more interest. And I'll do the same here quickly. And now I'm making them somewhat at random, because we're going for an organic effect. There we are. Okay, and then I'm going to stack them. And try to fit those pieces in together. There we are, and then I'm going to just squish this into a ball. And this is just going to distort it more. That is exactly what we're trying to do here. We're trying to distort it. So this is a really nice, easy cane to do. And the thing is, I've made quite a large one here, as you can see. But it's so easy to make, and it can be used in many, many different designs. So it's a nice cane to have around. Okay, and then once I've rounded it out into that somewhat round shape, I'm going to then just roll it out into a rectangle again. But by doing that whole twisting and distorting the shape, we will have distorted those lines so that they're not so round. Oh, not round, excuse me, so that they're not straight. But I do want to have it in a somewhat square or rectangular shape, because that makes it easier when I am putting together my veneer so that I can cut out the pendants. There we are. Okay, now let's take a slice. See how it looks. There, that's much more what I wanted. It's much less, or it's much more organic looking, which is exactly what I would like. Okay, so that's our cane that we are going to be using. And so I'll just pop that to the side, and I'll bring over the stuff we need to start our veneer. Okay. And so you're going to need a sheet of pearl white that has been run out on a thickest setting, which is about 2 millimeters thick for me. And this is what we're going to be placing our cane slices on. So I'm just going to pop that onto a piece of paper, because I'm going to have it off to the side for a little while we cut our canes. And I'm going to bring over another piece of paper for me to cut my canes on. And I've had these sitting in the freezer for about 10 minutes. And so I'm just going to slice off the one end to make it neater, and I'm going to be slicing towards myself. And I'm just going to slice these canes. And now I've taken each cane and I've reduced it into 3 sizes. And I'm going to cut a whole bunch of slices from each of these canes. And that's why I'm working on this piece of paper, because I want to be able to just cut a whole bunch and then use them without them having stuck to the tile or things like that, or without them being in the way. So having them sit on a piece of paper, deli paper, or whatever you would like to use is a much easier way of keeping them out of the way. So I'll just continue slicing these canes, and I'll show you how I'm going to use them in just a minute. Okay, so I've cut out a few canes slices, so now I'm just going to pop this off to the side and bring over our pearl white. And now before I start laying canes down, it's best to have your pendants ready, which I do. And so I want to just make sure before I start where I want to actually cut out my pieces, because I don't want to waste clay. So it's not necessary for me to have all of this pearl white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, which are Serpent scales, and they're a new set of cutters, and I'm just going to take them like so, because I want it to look like it's joined together, so it has almost like a mosaic pattern. And I'm just going to use my craft knife to trim away most of the excess. I'm not going to come super close to the cutters, because that's never a really good idea, because you want to have enough space if there are accidents. But this should give enough for me to work with, because again it is going to get stretched out a little bit, so we're going to have even more room. But that's always a good idea. Okay, so now we will start. So I'm going to be grabbing my cane slices of our translucent cane, and I want them to be along the bottom. And don't worry if it overlaps, that's fine. Just you don't want any gaps, so overlapping is better. And remember, we're trying to go for that kind of twisted branches effect. So if they're overlapping, that's fine. You're going to create even more of that organic twisted branchy look. And you'll just do it all the way up, like so. And then you'll just go up as well over on that side. And then what you'll do is you'll grab your canes, and I actually want to just add a few more pieces. I've got some extra little bits that don't work out too well, and I'm just going to overlay them like that. And I can cut some of my cane off to the side here. And it's okay if you have little drags and bits and pieces like that, because you can overlap them. I just want to cut out a few more so that I can show you what to do with the flowers. Okay. There we go. And I want it to be fairly even, and I want to have enough of these that it's going to be visible on the pendants. There, and that's the one side, and I'm pretty happy with how that is. Then you'll grab your canes, and I like to start with the largest ones, and you're going to slightly overlap them onto here. And what I want to do is I want to actually start with the red and put a few of those slices down, somewhat near the middle, and then take the other red pieces going down through the sizes, kind of filling in those gaps, kind of overlapping. Like so. And then as you go down through the sizes, use those to fill in smaller and smaller gaps. And this overlapping of the flowers, once the translucent around the edges goes clear, it really creates a beautiful depth in the piece that you wouldn't have achieved if you were trying to lay them all out equally. So having the pieces overlaid, that's perfectly fine. And then when you're happy with the one side, which I am, I'd want to carry on a little bit more over here. Grab your next one, which would be this colour. And have that overlap onto the red as well. And just continue. And so I'm going to be doing patches of these flowers. Okay, and here is how it looks now that I've built it together. Now what we need to do is flatten out. So we're just going to use another piece of plain printing paper, and what we're going to do is we're just going to use our roller to burnish. And this can take a bit of time to do, but it definitely is something that you'll want to do because it flattens everything out, makes those layers all nice and merged together. And it just neatens everything up. And we're going to be putting resin on this, so it doesn't matter too much if we have a few seams that are still there. But if you're planning on not putting resin on and you want to put varnish or you want to sand it, then definitely work on burnishing it properly, because you're going to get rid of all of those unsightly seams. So I know this isn't completely burnished, but let's see how it's going so far. You want to lift it every now and then, see how it's going. We need to work quite a bit more on the flower area. This area started to flatten out, and so I'll just continue until it is completely flat. Okay, and here is how it should look once you're finished burnishing it. So you can see that it's stretched out a little bit, and I did that on purpose. And you shouldn't be able to see any of the cane slices seams. So now what we're going to do is we're going to texture the back quickly, because we want this back to be nice and clean. And the way I'm going to do that is by using plain printing paper. So I'm just going to pop printing paper on the bottom, and then I'll grab another piece. Okay. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just gently going to burnish. And this will get rid of any of those bits and pieces that weren't quite smooth on this. Let's have a look. Okay, and I've just got a few more here. For the most part it is smooth. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to place this onto my tile. I'm going to do this very carefully. I'm gently going to smooth so that it is stuck down, and then we're going to cut out our pieces. I'm just going to lay them on here. And I have no clue what these are actually going to look like, because I can't see that. And let's see, we swap them around. Yeah, so we need to do them in the opposite direction, I do believe. Okay, so I just made a double check. So what we'll do is we'll just pop each cutter down and press. And now the reason I'm cutting from the back side instead of the front is because I don't want a dome on the front, and if you're cutting with the cutter the side that is facing up through the cutter, that is going to have a very, very slight dome. And that's fine usually, but I'm going to be putting resin on, and any dome can be a little bit troublesome when it comes to resin. And we could smooth it out, of course, but that would take a bit of time. And so this is just the easier way of getting it done. And so I'm just taking each of these and I'm pressing them down firmly, because you want to make sure that they cut through. I've got probably about a 2mm thick sheet, so you want to just make sure that you're reaching that bottom. And I'll just continue cutting out our pieces until I am done. Okay, and then when you're done, you should go back and just press on these again, just to make sure you didn't miss any spots. Especially with the larger ones, it's very easy to miss, so I like to go along the edge and just make sure that I did get everything. Okay. Now we should be able to lift them out without them sticking. They should stay stuck to the tile. So it's pretty easy to do that. This one's stuck a little bit there. Okay, and if they do lift up, you can just gently smooth them back down. Okay, and then I want to take this one, and I want to just cut out again so that I can have some earrings, because there's enough space here for that. There we go. Move those out the way. Smooth these over, make sure they look really nice on the back. But you can see that they have a dome to them, which is really nice for the back, I think. And this should lift up nice and clean. You're going to have a tiny bit of residue around the edges, but that actually does not matter much at all. Okay, and then we're going to use a tissue blade to carefully pick each of these up. Okay, so you can see we've got a beautiful, perfectly flat edge, and the sides will also come out quite a bit nicer. So what you want to do now is you just gently want to go around the sides and just smooth off if there's any residue, which there'll be a tiny bit left, and this will just make it a lot easier with the resin. Okay, there we go, and then I'm going to pop that onto a piece of paper off to the side, and you can see that most of the residue is actually left on the tile. And if you're having a lot of trouble with the residue and don't really want to have to smooth it off, you can just use a blade to trim away the really small amount that is there. Which, with some shapes like these, is actually really easy. There we go. Then I'll pick that up. Gently tap the sides, make sure that it's all good, and I'll put that back onto my piece of paper. And I'll continue doing that for all of these. Okay, and then when you're done, this is how they should look. Nice and flat and even. And then what you want to do is just take a piece of plain printing paper or greaseproof paper and just gently burnish the top. Don't press too hard because you don't want to be squishing it. But just gently burnish it a little bit to get rid of any fingerprints that you might have put on it. And just in general to tidy it up a little bit before going in the oven. And it just smooths out things. We're going to have to give it a little bit of minor sand, but because we're using resin today, I don't have to worry about sanding too much. And if you weren't going to use resin, I would cut it the right way around instead of the back side like I did, because that dome looks quite nice once sanded, but with resin it just causes a little bit of trouble, so that's why I cut it the wrong way around. Okay, and there we go. That's given it a nice light touch. And now I'll put this in the oven for a full hour at Premo's recommended temperature. And what I'll do is I'll probably put a piece of plain printing paper over the top of them, like so, just to prevent any scorching, and then when they are cool we can move on to sanding them. Okay, so they're out of the oven and are cool, and so now I'm ready to sand. And I've sanded all of these already with just a light 400 grit sandpaper, and that is all I'm going to need. I'm going to sand the front quickly to remove any things like you can possibly get some of the micas from the pearl white onto the front. You could get some smudges, and it basically will just clear it up a bit, make it look a little bit better. And I'll do the same on the sides and on the back. And that should be all that you need. It should just be a nice clear picture without any distortion in the look. So now what you want to do is you can either drill them now or you can drill them after we have done the resin. I think I'm going to drill them after the resin. So now you're going to need a mixing cup and you're going to need your chosen resin. Now if you're using something like magic gloss, you don't have to worry about using this resin, a measuring cup. But if you are using a 2-part resin, you do need a measuring cup. So I'm going to start with the part A first, which is the slower flowing of the two and is the resin part. And I'm going to mix up about 10. Actually, I think we're only going to need about 5, to be honest. I'm going to mix up 5 of the resin and then 5 of the hardness, that we have about 10 mils in total. And now if you have an ice resin plunger, it is quite a bit easier. You don't have to do this measuring process. But if you don't have the plunger, just gently go around and make sure that you've done the measuring properly. Because the ice resin isn't very forgiving when it comes to this if you don't do the measuring properly. So just make sure that you do this properly. And actually I think I'm probably going to need about 20 mils. So I'm going to mix up 10 for the resin part and then 10 for the hardener. Now I like to use the resin part first because I find that it flows slower, and so it's easier to work with in the beginning and it's easy to make a correction. If you've worked with this resin before, you'll know what I mean about that. Because the hardener flows quite a bit faster than the resin, and so I like to always use the slower part first. It just gives me a little bit more control over what I'm doing. Okay, we're almost there. There we are. Okay, I'll pop that to the side, and now you'll see how fast the hardener flows compared to that. So this is part B, and we'll see how quickly this one gets to the 20 mil mark compared to how quickly the resin got to the 10 mil mark. So it's almost there, just a little bit more. Okay. And there we are. So you'll see that the hardener flows quite a bit faster. Okay. So now that we have our resin measured out, we are going to mix it. And I spend about 5 minutes mixing, just because I have about a 40-minute working time on average. If you're in a really hot climate or it's like the middle of summer, you'll probably have about 30. And if you're in the middle of winter, you will probably have about 60. Now keep in mind that depending on how much resin you're mixing up, if you're mixing up a small amount, you will have more working time, whereas if you're mixing up a fairly large amount, you will have less time. So if I was mixing up about 100 mils of this for whatever reason, I would probably have only about half an hour working time, and probably close to about 20 minutes working time if it was in a hot climate, and 40 if it was cold. So with the smaller the amount, the longer your working time, but the longest working time I've ever had when it's quite cold is about 60 minutes. So on average, I'd say you have about 40 minutes to work with it. And so I like to mix for about 5 minutes, or until I can't see any more streaks, and then a minute after I can't see any streaks. And just make sure you scrape off whatever you're mixing every now and then. And make sure to go around and scrape the edges every now and then, and scrape the bottom, because those are areas that can easily not hide resin that hasn't been mixed properly, and then that can cause problems later on with your resin not curing. Most of the time, if your resin has not cured, it is because you didn't mix properly rather than the fact that you didn't actually measure it out properly. That is generally the main problem. So I'll continue mixing this for probably about another minute or so, and then I'm going to let it rest so that these bubbles can rise to the surface. They're not a big problem if you're not casting something. If you're casting something, you want to mix a bit slower, because these bubbles are really hard to remove, but because we're just putting it on a polymer clay piece and there's very little resin on the surface, these rise up really quickly and you'll be able to get rid of them. So that's about done. I am now going to just pop this to the side, and we will let that rest for about 30 seconds or so, just to let things rise to the surface. And then I'm going to talk about the surface that you're going to want to cure your resin on. You're going to want some sort of a silicone mat, because any resin that you get on it, like here's a bit of resin, it will just pop out really easily. And so instead of curing it on something like a piece of glass or a tile or even paper, I did that once, very bad idea, if the resin, if it spills off of your bead, won't stick to this, whereas it would stick to the tile and the glass, and it'll be really hard to get off, and the paper would just basically bond to it. So if you can, get a silicone mat with little holes so that it's really easy to get rid of your resin, instead of it becoming a pain. And now if you wanted to drill holes in the front of your bead, I usually like to do it along the sides. If you want to do it in the front, always do that after the resin, and just use a pin drill or a automated drill to do that, instead of drilling the holes first and then the resin, because that is just a major pain to keep clean when you're pouring the resin, and the resin likes to spill through it, and it's just a real pain to keep clean. So now this has been resting for about 30 seconds, and you can see that there's almost a foam at the top. You can now use a straw to just gently blow on it to get rid of your bubbles. Don't blow hard, it's the carbon dioxide in your breath that pops the bubbles, rather than the actual force that you're blowing with it. So you have to have a very light breath. Now I know that some people like to use a torch, but you have to be careful because it can actually light the resin on fire. So if you want to do that, then just be very careful, but I prefer to use a straw. Now just watch these pop. And you can see that I'm not blowing that hard. Okay, and that should be fine for the moment. When we pour it onto the bead, the resin, the bubbles in the resin will continue to rise. And now when you're doing this, put a very small amount of resin on top. You don't want to have the resin going over the sides, because then it creates spills and then it just adds to the process, and you don't really need that, and it's easily avoided by just adding a little bit of resin at a time and not trying to overdo the dome. If you want a really nice dome and want to avoid spills, the best thing to do is to just put on a little bit of a layer, like about that much, where you just have a light dome, and then you will leave that and you'll keep some of your resin in your cup, and then you'll wait until maybe about the 20 to 30 minute mark, or until it's kind of like honey that hasn't been heated, and then you will put it back on your bead and it will be less likely to spill. Because right now, hopefully you can see it's like really watery, and so it doesn't hold its surface tension very easily. So if you want to get a nice dome but don't want spills, just wait until it starts to cure. And so long as you don't have hundreds of beads to go and resin in one batch, that should be fine. If you've got a whole bunch of beads, it's probably not a great idea to mix up a big batch and then leave it for like 10 minutes of working time, because it will generally cure before you're finished. So only with small batches would I do that. But you can see how nice it's bringing out the colours. It's bringing out some of the pearl white in there, and it's just bringing out the depth in the piece. So I'll continue to pop some resin on this, and then when I'm done with that, I will leave this for about 20 minutes just to harden up, and then we'll leave it to cure. Okay, so these have been sitting for around 20 minutes, and the resin that I have in here has thickened up quite considerably. You can leave it a little bit longer, but I think this will be fine. And you still don't want to be going and overdoing it. You still want to only put on a little bit at a time. See how the dome goes, and then add more if you need. Don't go and overdo it, because then you will get drips. Drips aren't a complete disaster, but it does mean that there's quite a bit of cleanup and it just takes more time. Whereas if you can prevent them, you get a cleaner finish and it takes less time at the same time as well. So most of the large ones you will want to add some more resin to, but smaller ones like this one and this one, and even to a certain degree these ones, you want to just be careful because they have a smaller amount of surface to cover compared to the larger ones. So you can easily overdo the resin with those ones. So just be careful when adding resin to these ones. And now another little rule that I have for myself is just because I have a little bit of extra resin doesn't mean I need to pour it on my beads, because generally that is more detrimental than anything else, because I have that little bit of resin and surely it will fit onto that bead, but oftentimes that is, you know, the straw that breaks the camel's back and I end up getting a drip. So just be careful that you don't accidentally do that, because it does happen quite often to me. If you have a little bit of resin left, then you have a little bit of resin left. This is why I like to keep beads that I haven't resined yet off to the side, and they're optional for me. I will cover them if I need to, but generally if I have a little bit of resin left, those ones I will cover. Like I have a little bit of resin left here, but I've covered them enough. I don't want to do any more because I will probably end up with drips. So I'm going to put that to the side, and ignore this. Now what you want to do is you want to bring over your straw again, and you want to just lightly blow over the surface of your beads to get rid of bubbles. There we go. And just come back every now and then and do that for maybe the next 5 minutes. And you should be able to get pretty much all of those bubbles. Okay, and then I will leave these to cure for a full hour. Excuse me, not for a full hour, for a full 24 hours before I actually use them, because the resin needs to set properly. Okay, so these are finished curing. Now I have a quick tip for those of you who are impatient to wait for your resin to cure for about 24 hours. You can actually put them in the oven at a really low temperature, the lowest your oven can go. I put mine in at about 70 Celsius. And that is how high I would go. I wouldn't go any higher, because if you put it in at too high a temperature, your resin will burn. But if you put it in at a nice warm temperature, it will actually speed your curing process from 24 hours inside to less than an hour actually. So I'd leave it in your oven for at least an hour just to be sure, and your resin should be cured by then. Another alternative to that is if you have a sunny day, put them outside in direct sunlight at midday, about 12 o'clock, and they will cure in about an hour too. So for those of you who are impatient, that is the way to do it. So I've put these in the oven and they've just come out about an hour later, and they are really nice and hard. If you can still ding them with your fingernail, put them in for another half an hour or so, and they should be ready to go. And this is nice because I know that a lot of you like using UV resin because it is quicker, because the 2-part resins do take a while to cure, but the UV resin is generally quite a bit more expensive than 2-part resins. So for those of you who are just using UV resin because you can't wait the 24-hour period, this is a great tip. So let me know what you think of it. So now I'm just going to be drilling a hole at the top of each of these pendants, and I'm just using a pin drill, and I'm just going to drill straight through. It should be really easy. There we go, and I'll go through from the other side just to make sure it's nice and clean. And I will do this with all of my beads. Okay, so I've drilled through all of these, and now we will start assembling our bead. Start assembling our project, I mean. So you're going to need a piece of Accu-flex, 2 Charlotte crimps, and 2 crimps. To start with, grab one of your crimps, your Charlotte crimps that is, and then one of your crimps, and you'll squish that tight. Bring the Charlotte crimp over and squish over the crimp, and that will hold it in place. Then you will need 2 Jumprings. Open one up, slide it through your Charlotte crimp, grab your clasp, and I'm using a toggle clasp, and close up the jumper. And that's your one part. Okay, and then next you're going to want to have chosen your beads to space between each of your polymer clay beads, and I have chosen white howlite, and these are 6mm round beads. Okay, and then before you start stringing, grab your pieces and just assemble them so that you know which ones go where. Just trying to see which ones go where. That's between these two. Which one do I think matches up better? I think that one does. And those are our two earrings. And those two match up like that. Okay. And then just start from one end and just start stringing. Really simple, really easy. And you'll just continue stringing until you've used up all of your beads. And then we'll finish up the necklace, and then I'll be able to show you how to create your earrings. Okay, and then when you are done stringing, grab your charlotte crimp, squish, bring the charlotte crimp back up, squish that one too, grab your jump ring and your clasp, and that's your necklace. Nice and easy. And so that's the first part. We will now move on to earrings. So what you're going to need for that to start with are 2 large jump rings, and I'm just going to thread those through the hole that I've drilled in the side. There we go. Okay, and I just need to clean that hole out a little bit. And that one I distorted a little bit while doing that because I had to push through a little bit of stuff that wasn't cleaned out. But there we are. Get that through. And then grab your earring. Pop it on, close your jump ring, swing your jump ring back around and into the closure, and there's your earring. And you'll do the same with this one. Okay, and there we are. That is our finished project. So we have a cute pair of earrings and we have a necklace as well. And it's really nice and tidy. You can see at the back's nice and smooth. You can sand them a little bit more if you wanted to make them a little bit more shiny, but I find that this nice kind of clean matte finish is quite nice on the skin when you wear it. And again, when you're working with a project that you want to do with resin, it is best, even if you're using metal cutters, to cut with the design facing down, because then it gives you a really clean, sharp edge to your piece, which you will then round out with your resin later on, and it also gives a nice rounded finish to your back. So I do hope that tutorial was helpful to you. Please do let me know what you thought in the comments below, and if you are on Patreon, don't forget to share what you made using this tutorial on my Patreon group. If you haven't joined my Patreon group, please message me and I will send you a link to the group so you can join. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.